Knowledge leads to action. Action leads to success. I'm so excited to talk to you guys today. We got John and Charles. You guys are still over in Chicago, right? As far as
That's
I know.
right.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Awesome. And I'm so excited to jump in today. And so what I really want to get into is kind of more, I think it'd be cool for your guys' story to talk more on how you guys got where you're at, because I know there's so many people like all three of us that were engineers and have that analytical mindset, kind of how to break free from the fear and the analysis paralysis, all that stuff to help other people, not necessarily get where you guys are, because obviously you guys are crushing it in real estate, but just find the, whether we want to call it the passion or find the courage to walk away from something that logically makes so much sense to continue to go. Because I know, I don't know if you guys talk to people, but there's so many people are like, oh my gosh, I hate my job or whatever, but I can't walk away from it. So I
Yeah.
think since all three of us have done that, like this would be a really cool opportunity for us to really dive deep and help those people that are stuck, if we can figure out some sort of pattern or something that's allowed us all to kind of walk away. So if that's cool
Yeah.
with you, like that's what
Yeah.
I would love to start. But let's go with John. Like, can you give us a little bit of a background on, where it is that you started and kind of where you're at right now?
Like started like from engineering and all.
Yeah, let's say obviously
Sure.
you're amazing. Are you from Chicago? Were you born in
Yeah, born and
Chicago?
raised in the
Yeah.
Chicago suburbs, and I live in the city proper. So I went to school in the city. That's where I met Charles. I met him at the University of Illinois in Chicago and studied to be an engineer, and loved it. I loved being a student of engineering. I loved learning how to tackle problems and how to use critical thinking and how to solve complex situations and to use my brain in that regard. And I've always loved math and I love physics and all those things just naturally, I don't know, made sense to me more than some of the more creative things. And so it just felt like a great fit. After I graduated, I realized that actually working as an engineer is completely different. Most things are
Wait,
already designed for you.
what did you go to school for? Just to let
Oh,
people know.
yes. So
What
I
type
was
of
a
engineer?
civil engineer, got my
Okay.
bachelor's in civil engineering, but I focused on structural and actually I focused on buildings. It was like my dream to design like a high rise and all this. But when
Okay.
I graduated, I was, a broke college student and got an offer from a Fortune 100 company to be a bridge engineer. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing bridge engineering.
Right.
No more buildings.
What do you think about that? Like just right from the get-go, your goal was to
Yeah.
get into buildings, and then whatever we want to call it, God, the universe, magic came and said, "Hey, will you settle for bridges?" You're like, "Yeah, okay, I'll go do that." Like that alone is, it should be a first, like, oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, I think it's just a testament to like how our fears can overtake and manifest themselves and just kind of sway our decisions even when they're not aligned with our goals. And at the time, I was 24 years old and I was still, my now wife and I were still dating at the time, and we were looking to, get our own place and all this stuff. So just from all the logical standpoints and all the logical pieces, it was the right thing to do. It was like, yeah, I need to make money right
Right.
away,
On
and
paper,
I
this
have
is
this
perfect.
offer. Exactly, exactly. So, was already kind of settling on my goals, which is a theme here to the origin story, I guess. So, yeah, worked as an engineer. Did that for about 8 years, almost a decade, and
Okay.
then COVID happened, and I had a lot more time to think. And
And you and Charles, well, okay, let's pause there. So you were
sure.
so at this point, John's working as an engineer for 8 years. All
Mhm.
right, Charles, let's hear your story. So you guys
Okay.
obviously
Yeah.
you were civil as well.
Yeah. So if picking up from the college timeline, yeah, also studied civil engineering. Um, I had always been interested in construction and remodeling and was just pretty handy and seemed like, all right, well, I don't want to, be wearing a hard hat and, construction vest, officially, but what's in my mind, a professional way that I could be involved in construction. I thought architecture and realized
Mm,
that might have been a little bit too don't want to say artsy for me, but yeah, I just wanted something a little bit more technical and hands-on. Um, and my brother actually helped me discover civil engineering, and you know, did really well like in school, and kind of plowed through the degree. I finished the year early, so I graduated in 3 years, and just plowing through classes. Had, you know, one semester like 22 credit hours,
Whoa.
18 credits one summer, and I was just like, go, go, go. So
What was the go go go? Was it trying to get to the result faster, or was it just to I can do hard things? I'm good at taking these things on. Like, what was the
yeah,
drive to get it done faster?
I think what happened is my brother, when we were in high school, he was like one of the top students in his graduating class, very hardworking. He was taking his AP classes, and you know, really really getting ahead. Charles was the jock and the class clown, you know. So I would take these advanced classes, but not necessarily do the best in them, and you know, wasn't even really getting the credits for them for the advanced placement, whatever it was. But when I saw him, and he studied chemical engineering, when I saw him
Oh wow.
graduate and you know, get this super high paying job, and you know, here's some punk kid out of college, just graduated, and he's already making more than my father, who's, you know, had been working for, you know, decades at this point. And it's like, whoa, all right, this is different. This is different for our family. And I just didn't feel like I just didn't want to get left in the dust, and in
Mm.
the background. So he was on a path, and he was actually supposed to graduate college in like 2 years, and he had, I
How's
think,
that
one
even
class.
possible?
Yeah, he
Oh,
took
because
all
the
those
AP classes.
AP
Yeah. Okay.
classes,
I
AP
didn't
classes,
grow up in the
community college
AP
classes.
era.
Yeah,
Well, I remember I graduated high school and I hadn't taken math in a year because I overplaced and I took my senior math when I was a junior. So I had a year off of math, which was terrible
terrible.
from
Yeah,
going into
into
calculus.
engineering. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So you
Um,
got done, you were on this path. You're trying to keep, sounds like pace with your brother that he's
well,
dominating
in
it.
yeah, in high school though, like I really didn't graduate many other credits, but when I saw him, I'm like, man, let me kick this into gear. So right after high school, took summer class at the community college while my friends were, you know, kind of out doing their own thing, and just started loading up on classes. And I just felt the confidence at this point, like, no, I can do this, and you know, starting to see a little bit of traction.
Mm.
Um, and then yeah, went into the actual university, did well there. You know, finished the degree out strong, had a
And you
few
guys were
offers,
in the same classes in
same
university.
classes,
And
same
even though
classes.
you left
Yeah.
early, because you left in three, John, were you on the 3 year pace as well?
No, so I was a little bit behind because I guess the part I forgot about was that when I graduated high school, I just had stars in my eyes and I was going to be a soccer player. So I first went to Benedict University and I just was playing soccer and I was just studying some like BS, like I don't know, Buddhist literature or something degree just so
That
I
sounds
can keep playing
amazing.
soccer. And I'm now looking back, I'm like, man, I should have stuck with that. But
Yeah, you were.
you know, at the time it was just something to keep my GPA up. And then I saw actually one of my closest friends, who was just the top star player at our high school. First game gets injured and he's out the whole season. And I was like, that could be me. And that
Mm.
just kind of was like a big wake up call for me. And so I did the same thing. I went to architecture first and then I went to engineering. So I was a little bit behind. So I was behind, Charles was ahead. And so that's kind of how we, I think, matched up our timelines.
Yeah.
So you guys did graduate at the same time, though.
We graduated the same
Yes.
graduating class though. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. So, okay, that makes sense. Okay. So then you
Um,
graduate, Charles.
we graduate at around that same time. My brother, who was, you know, 2 years older, he had been interested in real estate. I remember him going to the library, getting some real estate books. He was always also very entrepreneurial minded too.
Okay.
And yeah, bought a house in the suburbs, and tried, you know, flipping it. And this is while I was still in college, and way in over our heads. Like every horror story that you hear a lot of real estate investors talk about of their first flip, you know, that's really what it was.
But this
Um,
is you and your brother
this is
doing,
primarily him, but we were so, I mean, we'd always been so close. Any weekend or
but you,
holiday or
but you
evenings,
don't have a
whatever,
job, even though you were a
still in
badass.
school at this point.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
still in college at this point.
I was still in college at that point. Yeah.
Okay, I thought that you skipped getting a job to do the flip. So okay, while
No,
you're
no. Yeah,
taking
still there.
22 credits as one does, You're doing a flip on the side with your brother.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
this makes
something like that.
yeah.
And
Something
playing
like
water
that.
polo. Don't forget, he was also playing water polo during
I
Oh,
was playing water polo in college.
how did you do? I mean, I had two jobs when I was in college, but I wasn't taking 22 credits. So like I don't know how you took that many credits and were in sports.
I think one thing I found out about myself, and I think this is actually the case for a lot of people, if you give yourself some people, and especially me, if you give me 2 weeks to get a project done, I may drag it out in those two
A
weeks,
hundred percent, 100%.
right?
Yeah.
If you give me a day,
Yeah.
watch out, it's gonna
I'll
get
find it.
done in
Yeah.
a day. So
Agreed.
I think with me in school, had I dragged it out, I would have found ways to waste my time. But
Yeah.
because I just
Yes.
pushed through and made it work,
I guess
that's
that's
just
true.
that's
Because
how I thrive.
I did spend a lot of weekends and nights partying. So now that you brought me to that light,
Yeah,
yeah, that's true. But if I was doing other stuff, I would have filled it with something else. Okay.
yeah. There was no margin for anything else.
Right.
Um, so yeah, took on that flip. During that time, my brother went to a local, like real estate meetup. Met a couple guys there. They helped bail him out of that bad flip, and saw this young kid with a lot of potential.
And
Kind of
he
took him under
was
their.
engineering. He's a chemie at this time. Like
He was
he's
chemi. Yeah,
getting
yeah.
paid
He's
an engineer's salary. So he had income to be doing these flips as well.
correct.
Okay, cool.
Correct. But even then, I remember him hustling. I remember him spending so much money, trying to keep the flip alive and stuff. There was one famous story where he had, I think, like 60 cents to his name or something in his bank account, and he needed gas to get to work, and he filled up for 50 cents or 60. I mean, just
Oh
running
wow.
on
As an
fumes
engineer, a
as an
chemical engineer.
engineer,
Yeah.
and everybody's, like their white collar job and everything, not knowing that my brother's living in this live in flip. So at any
Yeah.
rate, they go and take him under their wing. They see some potential, and they tell him, hey, like, why don't you come work with us, and we'll be able to help you out, and you'll continue to buy houses. We'll show you how we do it. So he ends up quitting his job, working with them. Um, and managing their rehabs. Everything's going great for a while. And then at that point, I was supportive, just kind of on the sidelines. I then I start my first engineering job. Absolutely hate it. The first project that they put me on, I felt like I
What
was
was it that you were doing for job? Because
ah,
John was on
it was
bridges.
yeah, and actually it makes sense now. I look back. I had a few offers when I was leaving, when I was graduating, and few different companies. And as I kind of looked through the different ones, it's funny how I kind of made my decision. But I knew I wanted to go to a big company. I knew I wanted it to be in the city because I always wanted to feel like, hey, I get to go to work in, the downtown, and just kind
Mm.
of feel like a quote unquote professional, or so I thought. And that this one particular job had this comp time program, which means if you worked 48 hours in one week, well, that's 8 hours that you could apply for straight pay and just get paid, that one time multiplier, or you can save it in a bank and use it for extra vacation. And I was
Okay.
like, wow, well, that sounds really exciting because I could work like a dog on, for a period, but then just get to
What you're
take a
good
bunch of
at.
time off. So it
Yeah.
shows like from that point, I was really focused on having my own freedom. So the industry I ended in was the energy sector. The
Okay.
business group I was in was, nuclear power plants. It sounds really cool and glamorous, but it was an extremely boring industry from my perspective. As I looked around and saw some of the old timers talk about it, and they were really into it and stuff, and I was like, man, these guys have drank the Kool-Aid because I was not having it.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, but I was just kind of going through the motions, and that first project I was on for a couple months, absolutely hated it, weaseled my way, and kind of went and professionally complained to the higher ups and directors like, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this. And long story short, I weaseled my way onto a project I had no business really being on, where they told me they needed somebody more experienced, and that took me out to the United Arab Emirates for 3 years, 3.5 years, living in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, working on a plant there, and traveling the world every chance I got. At the time, my brother and I had partnered up as well, where I was funding a lot of the projects. He was kind of boots on the grounds with those ex-business partners, and everything was going really, really well. And um, they ended up actually pulling us into a lawsuit.
How many
It
years
was
were
really
you doing this? Were you engineering, funneling money back to your brother and doing these fix and flips?
14, 15, 16, so 5 years, I think, doing
Okay,
that.
so good
Yeah,
amount.
5 years. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it was going really well. At the time, there was like a high life period. I was like, man, I'm making money here. I'm traveling the world. I'm buying real estate back home. My friends are out just blowing everything
Yeah.
that they can out here, and I just felt, like I was on top of the world. But yeah, then we get pulled into this lawsuit, big disagreement. We realized that we were being used as poster, well, more so my brother were just being used as poster children. Um, Unmet expectations of, hey, we're going to have you come on as a partner and everything. And they were kind of just stringing him along. Uh, and next thing you know, we find ourselves just completely strapped for cash. So we were over leveraged. We
Oh
had shared
wow.
bank accounts that they had essentially raided. They knew what to do to kind of leave us high and dry. And yeah, it set us
That's
back
yeah.
quite a bit, trying
Yeah.
to recover from that. And that lawsuit lasted, I think, 7 years overall. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So uh, yeah, and it was hard because as we did some more exercises together, is just looking back and kind of bringing the stuff up and talking it through and realizing how much of that shaped who I had become. Um, whether it was insecurities or fear of something similar happening again, or um, am I really cut out for this business? It already went to pot once before. Um, so yeah, that was one thing that I know was really cool to be able to work through in our time, working together. And yeah, I don't know if I should continue, or
No,
this is
let's
where
pause
John
there.
left off
So
too.
cool.
So
No, no,
yeah,
this is good. So, and I will make it so that we can all three of us start talking. So at this point, you're in a lawsuit. Are you out of the lawsuit I want to know, okay, so John's playing on bridges, Charles is in Saudi Arabia being the king of the world apparently and just went through this lawsuit. When do you guys converse and like, hey John, are you tell me, how did that go? Like, have you guys been talking in the meantime? And you're just like, hey John, are you miserable? And he's like, yeah. And Charles like, yeah, me too. Like, should we
yeah.
just be miserable together? Like, what do you want to do about this? Like, how did you guys come together?
Basically, more or less. I mean, we were very, very close in college. And then
Right,
when
but this was
Charles
like
was
an
overseas,
8 year, how long of a period? Like, because you were out working at least 8 years,
Yeah.
John. So how many years before you guys partnered up for real estate?
We graduated 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, stayed loosely in touch, and then last few years or something, like very very little, I think, contact. I think we were no problems or anything. We were just kind of doing our own thing,
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
lost
yeah.
touch, and then reconnected. It was in COVID, so it must have been 21, John,
Yeah,
2021.
right around there. Because during COVID, I just had a lot more free time and a lot more time to think, and
Which
that's
can be
when I.
dangerous for engineers.
That's
Don't
exactly
let
how
us
it
go
proved to
inside of
be.
our own head. That's why we're so good at always doing, because it doesn't give us a chance to look back and be like, why am I doing? Like, do I really enjoy? Like,
Yeah,
who am I? And that's when it
yeah.
gets scary. So yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. I just started looking inwardly and was realizing that like I just wasn't happy with what I was doing. Like I was just doing it because I thought I should, and it was my degree and it was making money, and it was, in my mind, getting us closer to the goals I had for my wife and I and the family. And I started reading a lot more. I had a friend who really encouraged me to start reading again. And so I was like, yeah, I'll read a book a month. And I picked up a real estate book and was like, man, like this whole house hacking thing sounds really cool. And my wife and I at the time had just started to kind of look for homes. And I had finished Brandon Turner's book about investing in real estate. And he talks a lot about house hacking. And I was like, man, this is a really good idea. So I kind of pitched it to my wife. And she was like, well, this sounds like a great idea, but like, why don't we do that after we buy a house? And I was like, doesn't work that way. Like, we'll never catch up. Like, if we're going to do this, we got to do it first. And started talking to her more about it. She became on board. And then I started talking to my best friend, Slavik, about it. And it was actually Slavik that was the connect. Slavik was another friend of ours from UIC in the same circles and everything. And I think right around that time, Charles had just got back. from the UAE. And so
Okay.
I'm telling Slavik about this, and Slavik goes, "Well, you do know Charles is doing real estate, right?" And I was like, "What?" So that's when I texted Charles and we met up in the city. He came to my apartment and we started discussing, like, dude, like, how's it been? And this was, we were not in talks yet of like partnering up. It was just kind of like trying to get his experience about real estate and like what do you think of it, and just kind of gaining some of that knowledge from him so that we can both continue to do like our own things. Like I wasn't in a
Mm-hmm.
position yet where I was ready to leave my job or didn't think that that was the next move for me.
Okay. So how long were you guys talking? So at this point, Charles, were still engineering while you were in the lawsuits, and you and John, or not? Because I know you
So
started your own business as well.
yeah, so I quit my full-time job in like it was May of 2020, like just a month or two into the lockdowns.
Okay.
And I just said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I think seeing
And you were back
the
from United
yeah, I was back
Airways.
back home, and yeah, I mean, even started the work at home for those first couple months, and I was just hating it so much at that point. It was very different work than I had done overseas, and I think that was just kind of like the icing on the cake, or the straw that broke the camel's back, rather.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just can't do this anymore. So I put in my notice, quit.
But you didn't have
I
anything planned? Like this isn't very, you're a terrible engineer, by the way. Like you didn't have
I
anything.
had
Yeah.
I had a small portfolio of rentals at this point, and it
That
was
was meeting, and no, you don't have kids. Are you married at this point?
not married at this time. I'm
Yes.
currently house hacking. I had bought a house and rented out a couple of other rooms to friends,
Okay.
so that was offsetting a little bit. So between that, I don't think I necessarily minimized living expenses. I'm not a great budgeter. My
Mhm.
wife will tell you that, but uh, and yeah, I had some income coming in from the rentals, but nothing overly sustainable. It's like, hey, I could float off this for a little bit, but I'm really gonna have to, get my butt
Hey,
into gear and
wow. So how
you know
did you make that? Because this is what I really want to tap into. The person that has the job that they hate it, that they want to get away, and I'm going to take it to you, John, after Charles explains his. But like, what was it that pulled you to be like, okay, I'm done. Like, I don't know, because I think this is what so many of us say is once X, then I'll Y, right? Once I get this much, once I get the benefits, once I 100,000, whatever it is, your income, once I get that, then I'm gonna take the leap.
Yeah.
But I don't know of any people that I've really ran into that have got to the success like that did it that way. And most of us are doing it like I've had enough, like enough's enough. And so
yeah.
I'm doing this. So what was it in your mind that, or did you not have this like this a battle in your head of like, oh my gosh, it's such a good gig? Because you could have got another engineering job somewhere else in another discipline, whatever, and kept this charade continuing to go. So what was going on in your mind that you're like, no, this isn't what I want to do anymore, that allowed you to have the courage to step away?
Are you asking me again or Charles? Sorry.
I'm asking Charles.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
asking me. Yeah.
Yeah, that was you.
Um, what
I
was
was like,
the
I thought I was done.
well, you said you were gonna like go to John. I'm
I
sorry.
am
Yeah.
after because we're at your
After.
your your pivotal moment, your crossroads. So
Yeah.
what was it?
In hindsight, I'm trying to see similar trends. We have another mutual friend, Peter, who had gone the same thing. So I
So you've seen
feel
it done
like
before.
no, I don't. Not necessarily. I've seen it done before, other than maybe my brother, who was
Mhm.
just and went in and was crushing it. But I've saw it now after the fact. So after I quit, I got to see it with somebody else and seeing basically myself in them of I'm at work. It's really hard. It's kind of those golden handcuffs where I'm making good money. I
Mhm.
have the accolades. It's very well respected from society's perspective.
Right. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
professional and I was just like, you know what? I feel like I'm independent enough and I know that long term this is just not sustainable. And I think there's a lot of people that kind of had that, do or die or that make or break moment where it's if I don't do something about this now, I'm gonna just really pigeonhole myself and I'm just gonna continue to be miserable. Because leading up to this, I felt very, very miserable at my job. And I know it sounds very ungrateful to say, because as everybody's clenching onto their jobs during COVID, and a lot of people had some really really hard financial times. There's Charles who thinks he's better than everybody and he doesn't need this job and he's going to leave, and go do his own thing. That wasn't my heart behind it at all.
Yeah.
But I just knew I couldn't fake it anymore. I'd come to work. I don't want to say depressed, but really reluctant, just zero energy to do the work. It was just, when we were saying like the pain pushes until the vision.
Mm.
I was just pushing, man. There was
Yeah.
no vision.
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
nothing to pull me, and that push can only go for so far. So I just kind of, cut the umbilical cord, and I said,
But
you
you
know
didn't
what?
have
I
a
know
vision. Where's your plan? Cool. Engineering's not it. Anything else? Or where you're like, I'm going to give this up because this is what a lot of us do is we're holding on to a vine and we want to go to the next one. And sometimes we have to I mean, these things actually work out pretty good if I can get it, but
yeah,
you have to let go of this one to be able to get to the other one. And
yeah.
a lot of people will do that. Okay, cool. I'm going to get rid of engineering because I'm going to go to real. Like, what was the vine that you were going to grab onto? Or did you not even have a vine?
I think it was just that I could go and continue pursuing real estate full
Okay.
time as opposed to a side gig. And that's
Okay.
what it had been. So I thought, while I was there, I went and got my license and I was taking these night classes and stuff, which a lot of people do. And
That
I just
wanted.
realized that
I
wanted.
tried to do it and I couldn't do it.
Oh, really? Yeah, it wasn't that bad.
No, I
Um,
don't think it was bad, but it's no different than I haven't learned Mandarin. Like the want isn't really there.
the one is there. Yeah.
Like I know I
Um,
could pass the real estate test, but like every time I went to go practice and study, like no, but have me go do a 48-mile run in 48 hours or go cold plunge, like yeah, I can do all those things. But
sure.
anyway,
Yeah, and it just seemed for me that was something getting me closer to my goal, which was, real estate or
yeah.
investing full time. So yeah,
Okay.
I decided like, man, in order to really do this, and I've gone long enough trying to do the two together and realize it wasn't sustainable. I mean, I was just working crazy hours, long commutes. It just wasn't practical. And you do that for so long and you realize if I continue on this path, nothing's going to change. So I have to make a decision. And that
Right.
decision was to just quit.
Okay. All right. What about for you, John? So 8 years. Had you already quit by the time you and Charles started working together when we all met? Or
No, so I talked to
oh,
Charles a little
for
bit
some
about
reason
real
I thought
estate.
that you weren't working as an engineer anymore when we were all working together.
Oh, when we started working together, yes. At that
Yes.
Okay.
point, yes. But when I had first spoken with Charles, I was just trying to get some knowledge about real estate, utilize that knowledge to then find, this triplex that we live in, and then started house hacking. So, moved a little bit further away from work, but was still doing engineering. And so now I was kind of like what Charles was saying earlier, like this split where I was a landlord on one hand, but also still an engineer on the other hand.
Okay.
And what I discovered was that I really, really enjoyed being a landlord.
Oh,
Like
really? Wow.
truly enjoyed it, not just the like the perks that come with it, but Janelle and I are pretty big homebodies, I would say. I'm rather introverted, even though I tend to come off as more out there and extroverted. I'm very introverted. So for me, home is like my safe space. And so we had this just passion for providing like just beautiful and clean and like homes people would be proud of to live in. And we wanted to that was kind of our vision, was like we want every single property that we rent out to be somewhere that even we would be proud to live in, right? So that was kind of the vision and we loved it. And then that love kind of started to really bring out all the things I didn't like about engineering. And
Mm,
so seeing
interesting.
how like effortless that was and seeing how much like passion I had for it. And like, I would get a call from my tenants because something was broken or busted or leaking. And I wasn't like, oh, here we go again. And instead it was like, ooh, like just like when I was a student, like this is a problem. How do I solve it? And it was
Mm.
like, I had that intellectual challenge again, and that just really fired me up. And so I started leaning away from engineering and more into real estate. And then Charles and I just continued our conversations together. And, at that point, Charles was starting to get a little bit like more informed about like things like pace and sub two. And I was also listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast. And so like I was listening to these things kind of at the same time and was like, man, like these guys are buying all these properties for like low to no money down. And like maybe I don't need my job. Like I've been telling myself I got to work hard at my
Mm,
job so I can buy more real estate, but maybe
mm.
I don't have to do that anymore. And so I started having these conversations with Charles, and Charles is like, dude, I'm there, but I can't do it alone. and we were at a yard house, just like having some beers and stuff. And, we were just kind of like spitballing these ideas and just having like a little thought session. And I was like, dude, I'm going to put in my 2 weeks tomorrow. And he was like, wait, what? Like, I don't want that responsibility. Like, what do you mean? And I was like, no, no, no. Like, I'm buying into the vision. Like, Janelle and I have some savings saved up. Like, I've run the numbers. Like, we can float for a bit. I wasn't in a position where like my rentals were covering all my expenses, but like I knew that it would be enough to kind of float us, especially while Janelle was still working. And I was
What
like,
was your time frame that you had floating? And I'm not saying this just to be in your space, but like I think people need to hear this. Like when
yeah,
they're like, "Oh, well, it's easy for John, it's easy for Charles because you had 2 years of savings saved up." Like I just want to be as real with people so that they can know like you can do this too. And
yeah.
it's not going to be easy. It's not sexy, but it's if your want is there, if you want it bad enough, you'll find a way to make these things work. So
Yeah. And
how many months do you think that you had that you guys would have been okay?
so we were very fortunate. We were, trying to, I had it in my head that I would work as an engineer and buy a property every year. So like we were trying to save up for the next property. So I had a sizable savings and, by my math and where we were living and our lifestyle, everything, I was like, okay, at 9 months, I'm going to have
Okay.
no money. So I had
Okay.
9 months,
Which is
and
still scary.
still very scary because, well, I mean, I'm sure we'll go into more of it, but when Charles and I started, we were like, dude, we're two engineers, like we got this. He has all this
We're
experience
so
in real
smart. I think
estate.
We're
I
so smart.
remember
Yeah.
wasn't so for no one that knows, like we so Charles, John, and I we did coaching together. And the way that we met, it was you, Charles, right? Wasn't it
Yeah,
Yeah.
you? That
yeah,
Yeah.
was so
Charles.
I host for some people that watch this isn't in sub two. So I host this daily dial coaching thing for probably the last 3 years inside Pace Morby's group. And so I'm in there coaching, giving people advice. And was it you? Did you raise your hand and I was talking to you, or I was talking indirectly
Yeah.
to someone else?
No, I think, yeah, I was in one of the sessions and I heard you maybe mention something about engineering and I was like, and I like, I'm not a shy person necessarily, but I don't know, I could be so in some of those settings. And I said, you know what, I really got nothing to lose. Let me, like, at that point, I had no, I don't know how to word it. I just didn't care about how I came off or,
Right.
if somebody was going to comment or like, who's this guy or why is he talking about this? But I was just like, I'm just going to ask the question. So I don't even remember the question I asked you, but it was something with like, man, I'm having a really hard time here. And it's probably something along with the struggle with analysis paralysis. And I feel bad because we ended up hijacking that session for a good, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes or something talking about this. And you're like, hey, like if you, I maybe I asked like if I can connect with you separately and
Hmm.
stuff afterward, just because I felt like we had kind of that same struggle and just obviously you were further ahead in it
Yeah.
and overcoming it. But yeah, I think that's how we got connected originally. I got off that call and called John like immediately after. I'm like, dude, I met this guy. He's another engineer, and he's crushing it, and we're gonna be able to connect with him, and he's gonna give us the secret sauce to fix our business. And I mean, that's really how it came off. And we were just
Yeah.
super excited, like finally
Little,
somebody who's gonna
little
fix our
did you
problems.
know there was no secret
Yeah,
sauce. It was
there
all
is no
your
secret
sauce.
sauce.
But yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, no
But that's
secret
how it
sauce in
started.
that
Yeah.
regard, sure.
I
But
I go ahead, John.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I still remember that call because of that 9 month timeline, we're like in month 7 and we haven't gotten a single like deal in,
Oh, I
and so
didn't
I'm
know that.
starting to get, yeah, I mean,
Really?
I'm starting to get like real
Oh shoot.
depressed and I'm starting to get really down on myself and doubting myself and all this. And so I still remember like Charles being like, dude, we gotta talk to this guy. Like, he's an engineer too. He gets us. And I remember all I'm thinking was just like, oh my God, like here we go again, like another mentor who's going to try to give us the secret sauce. Like I was just kind of going through the motions to like keep Charles
Yeah.
happy
Yes.
and was like, all right, here we go again. All I could see were dollar signs and thinking like, well, now my 9 month is getting just even shorter, every
Mm,
month after month.
yeah.
And then obviously I think the best part is both of us needed you, but for completely different reasons.
Mm,
Charles needed you on this. Um, and I don't want to speak for Charles here, but I feel like Charles needed you more on the business side of things, and I needed you on the personal side of things. And that's that's why like you totally changed our lives and our business. Like we needed you for two completely different things, and you were able to provide that for each of us. And that's just what kind of kickstarted everything.
Wow.
Yeah, met us where we were at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thank you so much. That means so much. But what I was gonna say is when our call was Charles was like, your problem is you're too smart. Like you think you're gonna outsmart this wholesale. You think you're gonna do this because you're like, cool, we're two engineers. We know we're smarter than the typical wholesaler. Like this is gonna be easy. We're gonna blow right by them. And that's just
I
such
still
a
struggle with this.
oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thought of, and you know this, but for those watching that don't, it was just like this, like, no, society has told me that I have achieved some rung on this social ladder and I am this smart engineer.
Yeah.
I graduated early and I had this job and I did this and that. Therefore, I should be able to be doing
Anything.
XYZ in my business,
Anything. I
anything.
mean, give me a brain. I
Yeah.
can operate. I've been told
Yeah.
I'm smart. Like I
Yeah.
can figure this out. Give me a YouTube video. I'll do it.
Yeah. And it was a lot of pride and arrogance looking back at it. And um it, yeah, it was such a stupid way of thinking just because there's so much value that I could have taken from these other people. And
Mm,
in engineering, there's this dichotomy and there's this struggle between the engineers and the contractors. And constantly you have these situations where the engineers think like, oh, I know all the answers. These dumb contractors that basically don't have their GED even and whatever, and they're trying to tell me what to do. Whereas the contractors, like these dumb engineers, they'll
yeah.
put anything on
They've never
paper. It
even
takes,
done this.
they want me to weld this 3-inch weld upside down,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, why would you ever, in the field, at 40 feet tall? And it's like, no, there's so much value to take from both sides. So
Yeah.
because I had understood the engineering and construction side, I never had that issue. I had tremendous respect for the trades and all this. But for some reason, when that got into business and, real estate or investing or whatever, I felt just like those engineers that I used to mock and say that they're very arrogant and prideful. And I was that same way in just a different space where I just figured, no, these are a bunch of, you know, uh, whatever in real estate investors. They have no formal experience and training, and somehow they've managed to figure this out through dumb luck. And I'm just going to school all of them. And I think it set me back quite a bit because I felt like I had all the answers and I didn't care so much to hear what they had to say or, just take their word at and like, hey, it's just put in the work, put in the time, do the uncomfortable things and you'll get there. And I said, no, there has to be some code that I need to break and the secret sauce. And that, wasted a lot of time for us sitting there looking for it.
Yeah.
Um,
So with where okay, so let's fast forward. You guys got together. You guys were together for a little bit. We started to do some coaching, but I can't say that it was from our coaching that you guys really got where you're at. Like it was all you guys. So where are you guys at right now? So what does things look like in the business?
Right now, today,
Yeah, today.
it's business. It's new day, different problems, right? And like one of the newest things that we're working through is we had a bottleneck in our dispo, in our rehab, in our construction management. At the time that's Charles's wheelhouse. He had all the experience in that. So Charles is trying to manage and juggle that as well as all the things that he does as a real estate agent, as well as all the knowledge and experience that he brings from the creative transaction side of things. And so he was just getting very bogged down, and that was bogging down our whole system. And so at the time, like that was our problem.
Mm-hmm.
So then we hired our mutual friend, Peter, who is amazing and has a lot of experience as well in construction management. And so it was like, okay, great, we solved this problem. Well, he was so good at his job that we couldn't keep up with bringing enough money to keep those rehabs all running at full speed. Because now he's operating 6 projects at a time while we were just trying to
whoa, hold
one
up.
house at a time.
Tell me, what is your guys' business doing right now? And we don't need to talk about numbers unless you guys really want to throw it up, but like, what is your guys' business now? Because you guys started really with nothing. So like, so you have 6 flips going actively right now?
Yes.
6 active projects going on simultaneously at the moment.
Yeah, not all of them full flips. Some of them, medium flips. Some of them are just cosmetic stuff. But yeah.
Okay. And then what
Various
about
homes.
wholesaling? Like, what's the wholesale look like as
Yeah,
well?
I think we found our niche with doing wholesales,
Okay.
as opposed to some wholesales. Like we just found, and this has been interesting to see, like depending on who your end buyer is, you can cater how you're going to finish the project. So
100%.
if it's a wholesale, you're probably selling it to some other investor. If you do a wholesale, you can probably, depending on how it's done, get it to somebody who's looking for like a lower barrier of entry home, or some homestead buyer who's okay with things not being 100%. And then obviously the full on flip is going to be that homestead buyer. So we found a sweet spot of like, well, hey, we have the capability to close on this property, or, um, do whatever. And what is the biggest value add that we can add for the, what's the smallest cost for the largest value add? And we
Right.
found that oftentimes it's just doing clean outs.
Mm.
So a lot of these homes that, like, if you were to take professional photos, it would just look like people can't even see past the junk that
Right.
are in
Yeah.
some of these houses, where we have a couple crews that we call them, and they'll clear out, 2,500 square feet in, 2, 3 days, take pictures, throw it back up on the market,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
find somebody else who's going to be willing to take it. So we've had some really good fortune with that.
And you
And
guys are doing your own leads as well. So you're still
yeah,
like you guys aren't buying deals from other people. You guys are generating your
internally
own.
marketing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So yeah,
how many are you guys I mean, you guys have to be getting a decent amount to have six active right now. Like how
I think we've
many
been sniping them.
contracts are you guys
Yeah.
getting a month? Or how many contracts did you guys get last month? Let's just do that because we're in November
We're
now.
kind of lean and mean. So like I think we just did like a student spotlight with actually one of our other coaches, Josh and Tiffany, and I think they used the words um
You guys are
like
smart and efficient. You're engineers. Like it makes sense to be lean and
Yeah.
mean.
yeah, I forgot the exact word to use, but like we're not doing volume, but we're doing like quality, right? So like
Yeah.
since January to now, it's been 9 properties. So 9 properties in 11 months, which doesn't seem like a lot, but our average wholesale is a $60,000 profit.
Wow.
So we've been able to like really like Charles just mentioned, like snipe these properties that we think are going to be really great.
Yeah.
And I would say the typical, like the median is somewhere probably between like 30 and 40, but we've hit some home runs. Like we had a 6-figure clean out. We
Wow.
literally cleaned out the property and we got rid of a bad tenant. Well, he was an ex-tenant. All we did was prevent him from coming back. So we installed a security system. So $500 security system, maybe $2,000 or $3,000 in clean out, and we
Yeah.
made over $100,000 on that property
Wow.
just doing
That's
that. So that is definitely like our niche, and we like to just make sure like the margins are just like really, really fat, and not necessarily just cranking these things out, but just getting the cream of the crop deals.
yeah. So you're not, which I love about what you guys are doing, that you're not chasing down stuff to make like 1,000, 10,000, like these small little mini deals that take so much time and oversight. And especially if you're just doing clean outs, like that's even better than having to do like a full renovation project.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
I'd
we
say
didn't get
too,
there. Oh, sorry, go
yeah.
ahead, Chuck.
No, I think you're going to talk about it, but I don't think there are a couple ones where we've looked at, and like in hindsight, we're just comparing the numbers. And had we been a little bit more practical about the rehab cost and what the ARV would look like, we would have probably looked back and said, even the ones that we flipped, we were probably better off just doing the wholesale model, just
Mm-hmm.
basic clean out, just
Clean
to
out. Yeah.
minimize holding costs and
Yeah.
the
Well,
additional
plus your
effort of
guys' market
project
still
management and stuff.
is your guys' market still relatively strong that things
It
are
slowed
still
down in the last 2 months, I think. Um, yeah, I mean,
Big
part of it I
winter in
think is just
Chicago. Yeah.
interest rate, and then also, yeah, Chicago winters. But yeah, I mean, it's real estate's that hot potato, right? If I acquire real quick, I just want to throw it
yeah,
away. I don't want to be a situation where I buy in
hold it
peak
for 6
times
months.
and then hold it for 6 months. It's a totally different game,
100%.
and be stuck there. So um,
Have
yeah,
do you
so
guys
it's still learning.
it's interesting that you say that because I remember a time when we did a flip and we could talk offline or we can talk about it now, but one of the methods that we did is we started to get a pool of direct buyers.
Mm.
So then when a couple of the properties, the margins was so small, but this doesn't seem like it's an issue for you. But when the margin's so small, we could go to this pool and just have them be the end buyer. So instead of wholesaling it to an investor, because we knew the investor needed to get it at a big discount in order
Mhm.
for it to make sense. But some of these deals that there wasn't really enough margin, we were like, okay, cool, let's get our end buyers, bring them in, because we knew they were willing to pay closer to market for a property. So we started to do that on some of the properties. So something you could reach out to realtors, or if you know realtors, and go straight, maybe give them just a mini commission, like a couple $100 or 1,000 or something.
Sure.
But anyway, but that's cool. So you guys are taking it and actually putting it on the market and waiting. Are you have an agent that you're working with for that, or are
Charles.
I'm
you?
currently the
Oh,
agent. Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
are you listening to
What
yourself? Okay.
what's been cool too, and I think I shared this on a different interview that we did, but I think when I think of real estate or business or investing, whatever, I feel like within the real estate world or the current role that we're in now or the business we're trying to grow, there's maybe 10 different hats that I have to wear, whether it's marketing, construction management, the business development, the this, whatever you want to call it. And in reality, they're all required to some degree for what we're doing, our overall real estate business. But I think I only really want to wear two of those hats. And it might just be business development and yeah, I mean business development or just networking and stuff. And that's where I think I do really, really well. I don't care too much to get into the construction management anymore or focus too much on the dispo side, if that's an example. But um, in realizing that it was okay, well, how do we know those responsibilities are somebody has to do them, but I don't want it to be me. So we've looked now and we've hired a couple full-time, team members on now that are handling a lot of those aspects for us. So maybe now instead of doing all 10 of those things, now I'm only doing maybe six. And then soon all those other roles that I don't want to do would be delegated out. So I really do get to focus on two things that I really want to do and the two things I think that I'm good at, and everybody else is delegated. So just having the right person in the right seat doing that, the right job for them. And I think that's how everybody thrives. I look back at the time in engineering or just going through school and the public schooling system. I feel that it's constantly you're a square peg getting shoved in this round hole. And I look at, getting hired onto the company, they just treated everybody the exact same.
Mhm. Yeah.
There was no like, hey, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses?
Right.
Hey, you're engineer number one. Here's your ID number. I remember literally still logging into my computer with an ID number,
Yeah,
and
I remember that too.
and that's it. And you just do your thing. Where we're just so different as humans, and
Yeah.
feel like it's just such a shame that we don't get to always thrive in the best seat for ourselves.
And on that, well, I love that you're talking about like bringing on more people, growing the business. Like, do you do that when you have the finances to do, like, because I think a lot of people always struggle with that, like, okay,
Mhm.
well, again, it goes back to once X then all Y. Once I making 100,000 from my real estate as net passive, this is what all these people, oh, okay, once I get 100,000 net passive, then I'll quit. Or once our business makes so much, then I'm going to bring on someone else. So it sounds like you guys have been bringing on people. How do you decide when to bring on those people and grow? Is it just, you know what, we'll find a way, just like you guys have done inside of everything else you've done? Or do you have some actual metrics that you're meeting that you're like, cool, now we can?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. I
Oh,
I would
sorry.
say there's a lot of layers to it, right? I would say, first off, the saying goes like scared money doesn't make money, right? So if you're scared, you're going to always kind of be stuck in the same place.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to be just a blind jump, right? These things are calculated risks. And, there are rules of thumbs and metrics and things like that that you can use. Like I've heard it say, if you're going to hire someone, then expect that they bring 3 times that back to the business, right? So if you're going to hire someone for 60K, are they bringing $180,000 in deals in a year?
Okay.
Okay. If that's the case, then hire them because they're going to make that money that you're
But how
paying
do you
them
know
plus
up
more.
front if they're going to actually perform? Like, I think that's part of the jumping as well.
Yes. So as engineers, like it's all about the numbers, right? All about the KPIs, all about the data. So
Yeah.
everyone that is just getting started, like even if you are from ground zero, right? Like I can't express enough the importance of tracking every single thing, because if you're not tracking it, it's just a guess. So you'll begin to learn and you'll begin to know, okay, with our particular marketing funnels, it takes 20 people for us to get a contract. Okay. So if I want to get 4 contracts in a month, then I need to do 80 leads. Can I handle 80 leads alone? Probably not. I need to hire someone. So if I hire someone, can I give them 80 leads? How much is it going to cost me? How much are they going to bring in returns? How much is
Mm,
my average deal cost? So it's really a lot of like plug and play formulas.
right.
But there's always a risk because the human aspect is always the kind of variable, right? It's always the unknown, right? Like no
Right.
one was going to do the job as good as you or care as much as you as the business owner. So that is the part of the calculated risk. But don't just blindly jump. Make sure that you have everything else kind of figured out and you just know, hey, if I hire this person, can I train them to do 2 or 3 deals a month? Am I
Mm,
bringing enough leads for them to make that happen? And if so, then you got to take that risk on. So definitely don't wait. Like you need to start expanding to scale your business, but um, don't just jump into it. Like don't hire 5 VAs right from day one, and don't, you need to scale when you have systems in place so that you're not just scaling a whole bunch of chaos.
I love that.
Yeah.
So
I
go
might.
ahead, Charles.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was gonna quick add to that. I think there's a like everything. There's a balance, but in this like for this particular situation, there has to be some sort of proof of concept that I feel like you've developed on your own. So for us, we had to start out wearing those 10 hats, in that example I used previously. And it may suck, and you just kind of grind through and hustle through. And once you're able to get the proof of concept and know that, hey, I know I can make this work, it's really inefficient for me now. Then I can look and start delegating what's the biggest time, consumer that I have, but something needs to get done, but I can delegate that out to somebody else and start plugging that in, and then that gives you more time to focus on the other things, and you kind of step up there. I would be against just kind of going and blindly hiring this giant staff without any proof of concept, because one of the biggest motivators I know for me, other than I just want to be successful and have money, make profits and all this, but the additional layer of, man, I have responsibility. John and I have responsibility to our team
Mm-hmm.
and payroll, and these people are entrusting us that we're equipping them with the marketing, the leads, uh, the systems, whatever they need, so they can perform their job. Um, and yeah, at the end of the day, like it's their livelihood kind of at risk to some degree. So there's a book that we're reading together now too, Gapology, and it talks about it's really cool, and it's like I just pulled it up now, but like it's this cool little chart. But you have the knowledge gap, which is training, teaching, and the talent.
Okay.
The importance gap, which is the expectations, communication, prioritization, and then the action gap, and that's culture, commitment, accountability. So with every like if you make a hire, all right, are they not performing because they don't have the right training? And
Mm,
if you can go through and do all these check marks, okay, well, that's not the problem. Well, did you not set the right expectations for them?
right.
Well, that's probably a big factor. And then is there accountability? And if you do all those things and everything else is in place, well, then that's the only point where you can really rule out, hey, this is something to do with that particular person.
Right.
But you
All
need
your
to rule
systems
out
are in place.
all your systems are in place, or like, do I need to rule myself out first as being the problem? Because maybe the problem is with me. If I didn't equip them and give them the right tools to succeed, I can't, beat the dog for being a cat,
Right.
for not being a
I
cat.
like
Like it's, hey, you can't grade them on something that
right.
you're
You
lacking
didn't
in.
set them up for success essentially. And I think
Exactly.
that like I can't tell you the people that I've coached, especially in real estate, like hearing people talk about, oh my gosh, this employee that or that. And I'm like, so it sounds similar to what you're talking. Like I'll go through that. Like, what was your expectations to them? And they're like, oh, I just told them they needed to get a deal a month. And I'm like, awesome. What does that look like? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, KPI, how many dials do they have to make? How many connects do they have to make? How many hours do they have to be dialing? How many days? They're like, well, I didn't tell them any of that. And I'm like, well, then how they're not failing? You failed them because you didn't
Build them,
set
yeah.
them up for success. Of like, this is what it takes to get to this result. So yeah, I love that. Um, well, I'm curious. Let's do because I want to be conscious of your guys' time, but let's say if someone's starting, like what how would you tell them to start out? Like if they're starting, would you tell them to do cold calling? Is it I know your guys' story, so I'm curious if you guys think that the way that you did it is the only way, or for I guess better question. Sorry, let me redo it. I'm an engineer. I'm watching this. I'm in the Kool-Aid. I want to be just like John and Charles
Swimming
when
in
I
it,
grow up.
just
Yeah,
just swimming in the
I
Kool-Aid.
just want some of that Kool-Aid. So I want to get out of my job. What would your suggestion be to me to get where you guys are at?
Sure. I'll say something practical and something inspirational, I guess. And I'll just
Well,
say,
good.
from a practical standpoint, all of the marketing funnels work. Every single one of them works. It's just which one do you like? And we spent 7 months trying to make ourselves like a marketing technique that we did not like, which was the cold calling, the door knocking, the outbound stuff. It took us 7 months before we finally said, you know what? We're trying to force this and we hate this. And so once we started switching our business model to more inbound leads, everything changed. And we don't get as many leads, but they're more quality, and it's more in line with what we enjoy doing. And so that's what made it seem a little bit more effortless. Was that we were
Made
actually
it
in line
easier.
with what we wanted to do. Yeah, making it a little bit more easier. But from an inspirational, stand, I mean, one of the big quotes that I walked away with, which really what pushed me to kind of leave my job, is like, there's a very famous, like Jim Carrey doing some commencement speech at some college, and he talks about his dad, who was an accountant, and he just hated his job, right? But he was doing it for his family, and he was doing it to put food on the table. And he says, like, 21 years later, like his dad goes to work and he comes back and he was let go, and that was that. And so, Jim Carrey says something along the lines of like, my dad was doing everything right, and it was something out of his control that made him lose his job. And it wasn't even a job that he really liked. He really hated what he was doing, but he just felt that it was what he needed to do. And so when I saw that and I saw my dad fail, even though it wasn't even his choice, I said, why not take a chance on myself? Because if you can fail at something you don't even enjoy, why not just take that chance on something that you might love, because you can fail anyways, right? So might as well just take that chance on yourself and take that chance on something you enjoy. And so that was just one of the big things that kind of pushed me out the airplane window and said, I'll figure out the parachute on the way down, kind of thing.
Okay. And it's funny you say that because I was actually talking to a client the other day, and he was saying how safe he was at his job and all this. Like, what if a robot replaced you? Like, you're
Yeah.
replaceable. And he's
Oh
like,
yeah.
I I never thought, like, shut up. I don't want to hear this. Like,
Yeah.
but it totally shift his perspective because I think we're just conditioned on a daily basis. Society tells it like be this, like it's safe, it's good. But it's really not. It's this false sense of security. So
Absolutely.
what about you, Charles, for that person that's wanting to get
Yeah,
out?
I think what I find to be kind of this repeating theme is there's a balance between knowledge and information and action.
Mm,
So much so they're like, you start talking to people now, and oftentimes that question comes up, which I actually really don't like, when it's like, hey, so what do you do? And it's this like, hey, let me analyze you as an entire person based on however it is you make a living for yourself. But
yeah.
you mentioned like, yeah, I'm a real estate investor, or whatever the case is, and like, oh yeah, I really want to get into real estate. I hear that so
Yeah.
much. And you think about these people, and they start bugging me with questions and stuff. I don't want to say bugging me with questions, but they'll ask me a
No,
lot of
but say
questions
it.
and
Be
stuff. And
honest. Yeah.
yeah, and it's fine. And they want to be basically have their hand held. And I'm like, hey, you know what? There's this really good book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Go read it and let's talk through, and that'll give us some framework. And then they don't do it.
Yeah.
And then they come
100%.
back and ask the same stupid
Yeah.
questions. And it's like,
Yeah.
I
No, but
really
what
don't
is the
want to
secret
waste it.
sauce, Charles?
The secret sauce is, I
How
think
do I
it's
do it without doing it? as what I've.
Oh, it's what they're
So
saying? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Which it doesn't work that way. I
yeah.
think it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous for us to think like John and I and you, right? We spend all these years busting our tail at a university, killing ourselves. Our friends are all out partying. Well, actually, it looks like
I
Creighton was able to get it
I
and party,
dude, I was
Yeah.
I figured I was efficient. I was able
You
to
were
do
efficient.
both.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but yeah, you go through all this formal training and these exams and everything, and you come out with a degree. And I know this happened too. I start my job and day one, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah,
You still have
100%.
no idea what you're doing. And
Yeah,
people think that like, oh, like yeah, maybe they have a similar path or they studied something else and they want to jump into real estate, quote unquote, without doing any sort of studying. And what does that studying look like? There's tons of books out there.
yeah.
Like you need to be gobbling all the books out there on the subject. You need like YouTube University. There's so much information out there. You'll have to sort through a lot of garbage, the gurus that are kind of just puffing up things, and you'll find the people who are actually doing deals. You take that knowledge, and I think then you start coupling it with action. Well, hey, somebody said I need to start, pulling these types of lists. Well, let me try making some of these calls myself and see what I can find. Let me go out and start networking with people and see others who are really doing it, see how can I bring them value and where I can learn along the way. But it's this really, really delicate balance between knowledge and information and action. You
Yeah.
can't take action blindly. I have one wholesaler that got a hold of my number somehow, and he calls me every time, like right after he's like, "Oh, the person said they want to sell," and they come and they ask me like all these questions. I'm like, "That's no information. Like that doesn't mean anything."
Yeah.
But then you have a lot of people stuck in analysis paralysis who are just reading, watching YouTube videos, and like they're really, really excited, but have you reached out? Have you explored any of these marketing techniques? Have you connected with other investors to see where, and like, no, I'm just reading, I'm just learning, I'm just mindlessly scrolling through Zillow.
Mhm.
And, one day I'll get a house and a property, and it just doesn't work that way.
I agree. And I like it actually kind of makes me emotional because I think about I was listening to Bigger Pockets. This
Yeah.
was, about 2017 is when I bought my first duplex. But I remember listening to Bigger Pockets, and I wish I knew who the guy was because I've used this quote so many times. Because as being an overanalyzer, overthinker, he had this quote, and maybe he took it from someone, but it was knowledge leads to action, action leads to success. And so I just keep reminding myself that on a daily basis, that I think it sums up perfectly what you're talking about, that you have to have each part of it, that you
Yeah.
can't just have the knowledge, you can't just have the action, it's all together. And that's how you're actually going to be getting the success. So
Yeah.
100% on that.
The process also creates new problems along the way. Like, all right, now you got somebody who says that they want to sell. It's like, cool, shoot, I don't have a purchase agreement. I don't have a contract yet.
Right.
Now I have to go find one.
You create something
And
new that you didn't know that you needed before.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
benefit. And what you're saying, so I'll get this, a lot of people will come over and ask me stuff, and I even do this in my coaching. Like people always say stuff because like, so Charles, are you still doing your acquisition? You still talking to sellers? Or is
in the late
that out?
stage of it, if it's kind of like a tricky
Okay.
situation stuff, I'll get involved, which is it's problem solving for me. So I don't mind it at
Yeah.
all. I just don't want to sift through the garbage.
No, I
Like just
agree.
get me on the phone with somebody who's actually like a problem and let's see how we can solve it.
Yeah, so when I get a lot of these people that come up, like, it's, to me, everything's a smoke screen. Like, I don't believe it. I don't take anything for face value for what it is.
Yeah.
So if someone comes up like, "Oh, I'm really interested in real estate," rather than assuming, because I think, even, I don't have his book right here, but Hermosi talks about this, getting on the same page for definitions. Oh, you want to get in real estate. When I hear that, I'm assuming like, oh, you're ready to go. But now I know when anyone says anything like, "Oh, I want to be happy, I want to be this," like, awesome. What does that mean? So, like, someone's like, "Hey, I really interested in risk." Awesome. What did you do yesterday? Oh, nothing. Oh, what did you do last week that's getting you closer? Oh, nothing. Oh, okay. Yeah. You just want to get into real estate. That makes sense. Like, you really don't want it, but you're just trying to have a conversation, or you think it's cool or whatever. Like, I always want to figure out, like, what do you really want? Are you really to do? Because then I can decide how much information I'm really going to pour into that person. But if I realize that they haven't done anything, I'm like, oh, awesome. My recommendation, just go read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like that'd be a really good place to start. Or go look up Pace Morby or whatever it is. Go find
Pick your
something.
pockets or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever.
Just essentially just go do something and then come back once you have some substance.
Yeah.
Because I'll run into that too, where people are like, oh my gosh, I want to get better and I want to get my next deal. And I'm like, awesome. How many people did you call yesterday? I didn't call anybody. Okay, how much inbound marketing do you have? I don't have any. Okay, well, I'm really confused. You say you want it, but your actions aren't there.
In line,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So then, but at least it tells me like where to direct the call. If usually it's just like, let's just be honest, you don't want it. And that's fine. Like sometimes for a lot of these people, they need that permission to like move on because society, their grandma, whoever has been telling them, oh, you got to do this thing. So they're holding on to this belief, but their action doesn't support it. So it's like, what if you just let this go? There might be something better out there for you. So
Yeah, potentially.
anyway, well, good luck with all those. Okay, couple quick questions for you guys, and then I'll let you get out of here.
Sure.
Like, what do you think is one of the best habits that's allowed you guys to get the success that you have? What's the one that played the most crucial role for you guys? Right.
I'll say as business partners, if you're going into business with a partner, I think the habit that has really helped us so much has been what we call our level 10 meetings. Every Friday, we dedicate, is it an hour or 2 hours? I can't forget it. It always flies by, but we
Yeah.
dedicate time, we block out in our schedule in which we air out our grievances about whatever it is in the business, even if it's with each other. And we have found that it's just been so productive in making sure that no resentment gets built up. And when you
Mm,
dedicate that time to have these conversations in like a structured format, a scheduled format, instead of like bottling it, bottling it until it just blows up, it's very different when you say, Creighton, you're not really pulling your weight, I feel like, because of XYZ. It comes off way different in a structured meeting versus, oh, you think I'm not doing my job? Well, Crane, you're not doing that. It
right.
just
Yeah.
comes off totally different. So having those level 10 meetings, if you're in a partnership, I think are absolutely essential. And we do it every week.
Love that. What about for you, Charles?
Well, because John used the one that first came up to mind, which is a testament to how good it actually has been for us. Um, I only recently read Extreme Ownership, and I've understood the concept. I mean, Extreme Ownership. I mean, you could give a summary of that book in like one or two sentences, and it like the way I'd summarize it was like everything's your fault,
I love
and
that.
it sounds really harsh, but
No, it's ownership,
the,
responsibility. That's the only way you can change anything in your life.
yeah,
And it's
yeah, true,
everything.
like seriously. So I got a chance to finally read it, and it just helped kind of reinforce the concepts. And there's it's still a tremendous book, and seeing the balance of strategies and benefits from the experience in war, and then applying it to business and the takeaways. But um, with everything that goes south or doesn't go the way that I had originally planned, before wanting to go and blame somebody else,
Yeah.
I just asked the question, can I honestly look at myself in my heart of hearts and tell myself that I really did everything to avoid whatever it was that just took place?
Mm,
And it could be something with a contractor, it could be something with how a deal went, it could be a conversation with an agent, like who knows what it was. And I look back and it's a very, introspective look, and it's like, no, I see what I did wrong here. I should have explained this better, or that wasn't the right expectation that I set. And no, they didn't have the right training to do what I expected them to do. So nobody wants to be victim. Nobody wants to play the blame game. But I think it's been really, really helpful with me not taking unnecessary blame towards people who, maybe at the end of the day, like some of the things still are, they're at fault to some
oh, for
degree,
sure.
but it still
Everyone
doesn't
has their
relieve.
own part.
Yes, but it still doesn't relieve me of my part to play with it unless
Right.
I can look at somebody straight in the eyes and know without a shadow of a doubt I did literally everything I could
Mhm.
to convey whatever it was I was trying to convey, and you still did it wrong. then I still really need to look at myself and what part I played in that. Um,
I
and that's
love
been a growth experience because nobody wants to feel like they were the one at fault. They want to blame somebody else. That's just
Yeah.
human nature.
But
So,
that's how you
um,
become so much better is you start to take accountability and responsibility.
yeah, yeah,
Like I just did this whole tirade the other day, a YouTube video about procrastination. To me, procrastination is just your inability to prioritize things. Because when you want something, you don't procrastinate that. But we put
yeah.
this label on ourselves of, oh, I'm a procrastinator. I don't do things. It's like, no, that's just you not taking responsibility and accountability for it and using a label for you not to have to do any work. So I think that that's one of the
Very true.
best things I've heard of people. If we are to summarize a habit, is take ownership, responsibility. Like I think that's so crucial. That like that's how you're going to continue to grow and achieve so much more because that's how you can actually control the result. But if you keep blaming everyone else, you're putting all your control on all these other people.
Which
Like,
you
oh,
can't
it's their
control.
fault.
Yeah, yeah. And you can't
So
control those things.
Yeah, I'll
awesome.
go a step further, and I always say like the thing that the common denominator with all the greats, right? Like the Michael Jordans, the Bill Gates, the Taylor Swifts, the Kanye West, like all these people that are just amazing at what they do. The common denominator, so many of us say like, oh well, they're so talented, or they had the best training, or they came from money, or whatever it is, and those are just like the procrastination to me, just excuses that we tell ourselves because we don't want to put in the same level of work that they did. All those people have one thing in common, that is just this laser focus on their goals and this unrelenting drive towards it, and not letting any sort of distractions get in the way. That's the only thing that makes them, that's the only common denominator among all of them, and it's the only thing that makes them, separate from the rest of us.
Yeah. And I even find that in myself. Sometimes when things aren't working out, I try to look back of like, okay, what can I do?
Mm.
Because I was actually just talking to a friend about this the other day. Like, I feel like the old version of me, like he would make a social media post and like set it and forget it. Like, okay, I did it. Now I'm waiting for everything to come to me. Like, that's such a terrible way. Like, I have no control at that point. Yeah, cool. I put the post out, or whatever, but now I'm waiting.
Mm.
And that's just silly. Like if I'm someone that wants something, like the same thing I would have to someone that says they want real estate, like what are you doing? So that person that has more control, like how many messages have you sent? How many people have you talked to? Who did you reach out to? Like what more are you doing? Or are you letting yourself off the hook by doing one thing and saying, oh, that's enough?
Yeah.
Because if you really want it, like if we look at Kanye, Taylor, any of these people, like they didn't just set one thing and wait for it to happen. They said a million things on a daily basis. And
Exactly.
that's what it means to me when you really want something, that you're going
Absolutely.
to do whatever until you get what you want. So I
Amen to
think I
that.
see that so many times in the real estate. People are like, oh, I called one person, or I reached out to one agent, or I did one thing. Cool. Like that's fine, but it's going to take you forever to get whatever it is that you want at that pace. So, okay, how
Agree.
about
Very
mindset?
cool.
What do you guys feel as far as mindset goes? Um, in where you guys are at. Like, or I guess better question is like, how are you guys working on developing, a better mindset to get where you want to go?
Yeah, we talked a little bit briefly about this, so hopefully I don't sound like a broken record. But
No.
it is like I'm a I'm a big outdoorsman person, so like I use a lot of outdoorsman type analogies. But it's like when you're sighting or zeroing and calibrating the scope on your rifle, and you zero the scope, and you focus the scope, and all you see there is your target, and everything else outside of that is just black. And that's how we should be when chasing our goals, and that's the mindset I try to set for my goals. Is that whatever my actions are every single day, I have a choice to do a million different things, and each of
Mm.
those things are either going to get me closer or further away. And if it's going to get me further away, it needs to be in that black zone. That's just the distraction zone. Just get it out of my sight, out of mind. I don't even want to think about it. I don't even want to see it. And I just want to focus on getting closer each and every day to my goal. And when when I look at things from that kind of lens, it just like opens my eyes and opens my heart to all the different things that I want to do or need to do in a particular day. And I get excited for those things now. It's not just like, oh, here we go. Like the alarm went
Mm.
off again and I got to roll out of bed and make my coffee and go to the gym. No, it's like that alarm goes off and I'm just like throwing the blankets off. And I'm like, heck yeah, like it's
Let's go.
time. Like it's time to just go. Like I feel like, in the locker room of the Thunderdome, just like, let me just go hit those weights and, let me make this happen or whatever it might be. So,
Time to get
um,
swole.
time to get swole. Yeah.
So
I
do you do
wish.
that on a daily or like how are you because I mean how do you filter to get it into your field of view for your scope of realizing, oh nope, this isn't a priority, this isn't something, this is just a distraction? Is that a daily
Sure.
thing of you writing out your stuff? Is it a weekly, monthly? Like how do you set yourself up for that?
Yeah, so that's a great question because I think most people have many, 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 many goals. I think if I were to write down all my goals, I probably have like 100 different goals, right? But
Yeah.
my wife and I sat down and we said, and we wrote down like 10 of the most important things to us. And then we narrowed it down to three. And we said, what are the three most important goals for us? And they happen to be a combination of a dream and passion that we had. One was a fitness goal, and one was a financial goal. And
Oh,
those three things are just the main meat and potatoes in our focus. And every morning we text each other. What are the goals again? And
oh
then we repeat
wow.
it to each other. And
That's
so
beautiful.
that kind of accountability partner and that kind of just like reiterating of what the three goals are, it just like sets my intention for the day. And then it just becomes like a muscle memory, second nature. Before I do anything, like, oh, it's been a long day. It's 6 o'clock. Maybe I'll have a beer. And I just think like, wait,
Wow.
is a beer going to get me closer or further away from that fitness goal?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's just kind of how we go through it day by day.
So when you have your three, though, how do you know which one's your top, or do you have a priority of them? Because, like, cool, if it's fitness, like you could be running, 5 miles, and then you could go to the gym twice a day, and you could be eating certain foods. But by doing that, you're taking away time from your real estate and you're taking time away from other things. Like, how do you battle that? Because I think so many people get fixated.
Mm.
Oh, let's just use finances because everyone wants to finance. Like, how much time should they be allocating towards that finance thing? Because literally you could be working till 3 in the morning, you could wake up at 6. Like you're always giving up something when you're going after something else.
You are, and that's a great point. And so, we do develop all of our goals into like the SMART goals, and we actually set actual expectations and timelines, and try to break it down into daily activities because it's very easy to get into that trap of just feeling like so overwhelmed when
Right.
you think to yourself like this is my financial goal. Then literally every other action that you do, you're going to be like, I'm not chasing that. I'm not chasing that. I'm not chasing that, and that will burn you out. So, we've turned those three that we text each other. Those are 5-year plans. And from those
Mhm.
5-year plans, we've broken it down into year by year what that looks like. And then from that year, our particular year, 2023, we talk about what that looks like at a month. And then, even at a weekly basis. So for fitness, it's like, does that mean we go to the gym 7 times a week? No, it means, okay, at least 4 times a week, let's go to the gym together. Even if that just means we just go and we just walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes. It doesn't
Right.
necessarily need to be that we're, benching and squatting and deadlifting and doing everything every single time, but just like, let's just at least dedicate some time to that 4 times a week.
And I think what's cool with what you're doing, like this is literally how you start building really good habits, is because right now it's kind of more vague, like, cool, just the time. And I always tell this to clients when we're starting, like, it's just time. You're not worried about the results yet. You're not there. You can't worry about that. All we have to do is the thing we can control is we can put 10 minutes on the treadmill. That's your
Mm-hmm.
goal. Get the 10 minutes, get consistency first, perfection last. Cool. Now that we got the 10 minutes, you've been consistent for 2 weeks or 2 months. Now start tracking. How far are you going? How fast? And now the game becomes not just 10 minutes, but it's 10 minutes at a certain pace. So, like for you
Love it.
guys, it's like, cool, we're just going to the gym doing this. At some point, you're going to start to realize, oh, I'm normally benching this, or I'm normally this, or my body fat's this, or this. Cool. Let me just 10% that. Let me get a little bit better. And now that becomes your new metrics.
Yeah.
So
I
Love
love
that.
that. And I love that. And I love one of the things that you had taught us like in our coaching of just like having like that minimum target and then having
Mm,
that like above and beyond target and giving yourself some grace. As long as you're hitting that minimum, it's okay that you didn't go 6 times. As long
yeah.
as you go 3 times, like that's it. You should be grateful and proud of that.
What about for you, Charles?
A lot of things come to mind. I think one of the biggest takeaways, again, just from our coaching time, time together, was embracing the process along the way. I mean, like I
Uh,
think you had asked me once, like how could I like summarize the time that we had together, and I was like,
yeah.
embrace the process.
Yeah.
Um, I had so much, you know, bitterness and frustration of like, man, it's not instant, and
Right.
not having understood that concept of delayed gratification, and whatnot, um, and realizing that along the way there is, whatever goal it is I'm trying to set out for myself, it's not going to happen overnight. There are going to be the pitfalls, but even when those pitfalls and hard times come, I just know, hey, it's just another step closer. Um, and it's not going to be perfectly linear or whatever. There's just going to be some ups and downs. Um, there's a book I was reading recently, and I don't remember where the quote came from originally, but the author had mentioned, somebody else that he was quoting, and they said, "There's nothing new when it comes to fundamentals, and
Mm, that's
when it
good.
comes to the hard work or the perseverance or that discipline that it takes to achieve the goals." Honestly, when you look at anything, I don't know anybody who hasn't, like we were talking about this earlier, but
Hmm.
really is set down to achieve their successes. And whether it's Elon Musk or, some other superstar or the, Jordans of the world, there had to be some sort of fundamental that they followed through and they maintained. It was probably not perfect along the way, as none of us are, but they stuck with those. And they'll look a little bit different from person to person, industry to industry, but just realizing that there's no secret sauce when it comes to the fundamentals. And like I said, just being okay with the process along the way. In the 4 Hour Work Week, Tim Ferriss, it was just one of the first business books, or you know, I guess books on the subject like I read, and he had pointed out how these people will go and work their entire life and get to, what they esteemed or thought would be like the perfect retirement scenario, and they get there and they're like, I don't even like this.
Hmm.
My entire life was a lie. I have no interest in doing this for another, until I kick the bucket. And he showed how like you could take all these shorter vacations, trips, experience the things that you want to now, so that you can really, really figure out if that's ultimately you want to go. So this
Right.
concept of, and there's another book, start with why. Why are you doing this thing in the first place? And you really helped us see that, because the concept of I'll be happy when
Hmm.
X just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just
'Cause
doesn't.
how will you even know? You don't even know what it
You won't
is.
even
It's
know.
just
You won't
this
even know.
figment of your imagination, and you could be so wrong, or you could be so right. But
Yeah. And then
yeah,
that massive depression that would hit when you say that you did achieve that thing that you were aiming for, and then you realize that it didn't bring you the joy
yeah,
and whatever accolades that you were looking for at that point. That's a tough thing to reckon. It's like, what have I been doing this whole time then?
yeah,
So yeah, and there's a lot of growth along the way. We have a lot of really cool people that we follow and listen to in books, and we're doing book studies. So just constantly being encouraged. I think without being close to the fire from networking or being around or constantly reinforcing these thoughts of what you
mm,
want to do, I think you'll just stay stagnant.
yeah.
Um,
I love that. I was you mentioned this, and one thing that I've been challenging myself and other people when I want something, I've started to realize that I think there's so much more power of looking what you're trying to run to. That's usually I want money, I want whatever. But I found, especially in my coaching now, to get people to turn around, what are you running from?
mm,
And when you can start to see what it is that you're trying to get away from, you can start to realize, does this thing actually need to happen? Or is there a way for you to start to deal with this fear, deal with this thing that you actually don't have to get this thing? Or like you're saying, you think once you get there, it's going to solve your problem, but you haven't dealt with your actual fear that you're running from. So as soon as you get there, that fear is still going to be there. So it's going to have to be something else and something else. But if you can turn around and start dealing with what you're trying to run from, I think that that gives you so much more momentum to not only get what you're trying to get, but actually level up and not have this thing define you anymore. So,
Absolutely.
Big time.
anyways, okay, I want to get you guys out of here. If anyone's watching this wants to help you, what is it that you guys are looking for in your business, or is there anything that someone can help you out with?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I wish I had some time to think about this before,
You
because there
do.
are many,
Go
many
ahead.
things.
If our story has at all, I think, been inspiring, or somebody's in a similar boat, or um, I take this from a biblical perspective, but
Okay.
someone very wise told me once that in life everybody needs Paul and everybody needs a Timothy. And if you know the story in the New Testament, just Paul was an apostle who went out and preached to the Gentiles, and he had somebody that he was training, and that person, Timothy, who was training, was being mentored by Paul. So would love to encourage others that are in a similar position to kind of where we were, or somebody that's in a similar position to where we're at, or somebody else that would be cool with helping us continue on this trajectory. And yeah, just looking for different ways to pay it back. I
What are
think we
your
have.
requirements for someone that's, because you're going to get people that want to take you up on that? Like, I would set some expectations of like, cool, what type of people are you looking to reach out to you? How do you want them to reach out to you? Um,
People like, I would think we're just talking like genuine interest to pursue these things, and um, a level of humility, and yeah, I think so, to just know, not like I was at the beginning, or not,
I love the honesty.
where
Look at you, your
this,
first habit,
yeah, just because I
accountability.
broke from it. Yeah, I broke from it, of like this pride and arrogance of I have all the right answers.
Right.
Are you in a position to be able to take guidance and advice to somebody else? I mean, John will tell you too, like, we still have a long way to go. I think
You'll
that's going
never
to be a
be there,
lifelong
just
journey
so
for
you
us.
know.
Yeah, it's
That's
it's a lifelong
mastery.
journey.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, but to just be able to help others that were, have similar backgrounds or have same kind of internal struggles, and be, of an encouragement for them. Um, that's rewarding, and we look for those people in our own lives, in our own circles. And
Do you want people that are
um,
just in local in your area, or
I don't think it has to be.
okay?
No, somebody
Okay,
wants to
there
reach
you
out
go.
and connect, and talk, and we're able to help out. I mean, there's so much reward coming from not just the financial aspect, but knowing that we were able to help somebody else
Yeah,
out, and
for sure.
create. I'm sure even for you, hearing us now from where we've been, and able to look back and saying the time that we spent together and continue to spend together has been so impactful for us. Um, that emotional, what we call the
Wow,
emotional
that's everything.
uh, currency, or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it just goes a long way. So yeah, we'd be excited to see how we can help out.
Okay. What are you guys currently, are you guys looking for anything specifically in the business? Like, hey, we're looking for someone to help with marketing. We're looking for someone to do a program. We're looking for callers, triage, anything like that.
Yeah, I would say, real quick, first, I'll just say, like, on a personal level, if anybody needs help on a personal level, kind of the same way that I was needing that help, when I got connected with Ukraine, just if you guys just want to have a conversation, you guys can find us on Instagram. You guys can shoot me an email, whatever it is. Like, I would love to connect with people on a personal level that are struggling, and then that struggle is affecting their business and their, it could be their relationships or whatever other aspects it could be, and just share my experience with coaching and therapy and all of these things. And I would love to just help people get on that path as well. So if anyone is struggling in that regard, please reach out. On the business side of things, I think it's so when we say our niche is wholesaling, I think it's a two-sided coin. I think we are very good at that, but I also think it's also because we're not necessarily that great at wholesaling. And so I think one need that we would love to expand on our business is a wider dispo network. If anybody can assist us with Dispo, if you guys have buyers that are looking to purchase in the Illinois and Chicagoland area, we would love to connect with you guys so that if we find deals, we already have a buyer in mind, and we would love to work together with that. I would say that would be one of the needs that our business has currently.
Okay. And what is it that you guys are currently doing? I know, but I just want you to say, what is your current marketing that you're doing?
Inbound marketing, or talking about the Dispo side?
Sorry, repeat that.
Are you talking about like for acquisition marketing or the Dispo marketing?
For acquisition.
Oh, for acquisition. So we do all inbound leads right now.
Okay.
We have a combination of both PPC and PPL.
Okay.
For those that don't know what PPL is, it's like pay per lead. So there are sites like Need to Sell My House Fast.
And you're doing SEO as well, right?
Correct. Yeah. So the SEO and the PPC kind of go hand in hand together with our website. So
yeah,
for people that don't know much about real estate, when I get asked, what do you do? I say I own a marketing company. I own a marketing
100%.
company, and I market to people that want to sell their home off market. So that is what we try to do. It took us 7 months to realize that was the marketing channel that we enjoyed doing, but there was a lesson learned. But that is what we do.
Okay. And I only say that because if someone's watching this and they're Dispo and they are like, cool, we haven't figured out marketing yet, or we don't know how to do the online, let's reach out to these guys. Maybe we can collab of like, cool, you guys teach us some of the SEO, whatever, and we can teach you how we're doing Dispo or whatever. Because I feel like It's pretty similar stuff of what you guys both are doing. Go ahead, Charles.
I feel like I got to interject here quickly, just because when I think of it from that perspective, another side of my arrogance and pride of being an engineer is like, if I heard somebody back then say that they're in marketing, man, I would have looked down on them so much. Just put in my head that it's such this fluffy degree or the study or whatever, it's a bunch of nonsense, and realizing how much of an impact or drive it has on any type of business and anything. Like marketing affects so much. And yeah, just stupid pride and arrogance.
But it's not even that. It's learned behavior. And realistically, like if we could do a coaching session right now, like literally what you're projecting is really what you're seeing internally. Like you need to have your identity of I'm smart, I'm these things. And that's why you go out and judge at least this is what it was for me. I needed everyone else to be stupid so that I could feel like I was smart, because I didn't feel like I was smart enough. So that would be why I'd be, oh, you're a marketer. Oh, you're not as smart as me. Oh, you're this, like I'm smarter. And it's like, who cares? Well, I care. I need this. Please let me have this. You be bad so I can be good. But when you start doing the work, like what John's talking about, like when you start working on this, then you can be like, no, I don't need to be anything. I'm good enough who and what I am right now. That then you stop judging everyone else because you're no longer judging yourself.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
So true.
All right, boys. Can't thank you guys enough for taking the time to do this. This was so fun. I can't wait for everyone else to watch this. Again, reach out to these guys if you need it. We'll put your stuff down below. So reach out to these guys in Chicago. They're crushing it. Some of the nicest guys I've ever worked with. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, brother.
Take care.